We're getting there. She says, Mark.
Directions.
Okay. Morning, calling to order the Rice Creek Board of Managers regular meeting on August 9th, 2023 at 9 a.m. And we are sitting in the Shoreview City Hall Council chambers. I note that all managers are present. And are any changes to the agenda?
Manager Bradley, staff have no proposed changes.
Anyone else want to make a change to the agenda? If not, can I have a motion to set the agenda?
So move.
Second.
Moved and second, and all in favor, aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Minutes.
Mr. President, I have a correction for the minutes of the meeting
Please proceed.
for July 26, 2023. Page number 8, please. Lines 157, 158, 159. On 157, I'd add the word Thurnbeck before the word turkey, so we know what we're talking about. We don't want to be confused between Tessier and Thurnbeck. They're two different properties and development areas at time also. Line 158, the words after the word were, insert utilized for the development period. This resulted in many more taxable properties than the single Stanky property, period. That's the argument there is that they lost the 5 acres under Stanky, and actually when you look at Thurnbecks, they gained 22. So I think that's fairly fair about that. And down on 171 to 172, 173, I also stated at the time that the Columbus AC, after the word stated that the Columbus ACD 15 paid 1 water management district special assessment, and Forest Lake Washington County Ditch 4 Branch 1 paid 2 of those water sediment districts, meaning that this was done at the same time, but Forest Lake paid twice, and so that's why I felt they were neglected, and reiterated the need that they needed to have something done for them first. And then, so this kind of focuses on the argument that was brought about the loss of taxable property. And later on, the administrator from Columbus agrees about the Thurnbeck issue and also about the property that was sold to the utility corporation for a substation in the future. That was DNR property, that an acre and a half there. So I have to add some clarity to it. I have these and I've sent them to Teresa already. So thank you.
So with those changes, would you like to make a motion?
I make a motion, Mr. President, that we move to accept the July 26, 2023 regular meeting minutes with the corrections that I offered.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 5-0. All right, so that takes us then to the consent agenda, does it not? Patrick?
Yes, thank you, President Bradley. I do have a couple changes that I'd like to propose. If you could go to page 22 of your packet, I'll see if I can share the engineer's report here on the screen. Wonderful. Maybe I can zoom in a little bit as well. So I'm proposing a new number 5. This would make 9 total conditions. This would be that the applicant must provide a final updated replacement plan document containing all changes from regulatory review. And then also on page 24, there are 2 proposed changes. First one is at the top paragraph, just deleting a sentence. This relates to the last item of looking for a final updated replacement plan application. We didn't receive it on that date, so I just wanted to make that deletion. And the last one is more towards the bottom of the page.
Could you
Yes, yes.
repeat that?
Yeah.
I got lost.
Thank you. Yeah. Please.
Thank you.
Oh, it's different?
The first one.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm tracking through the engineer's report, so it is a little different. So it's right at the top of the page on page 24. The sentence is, the applicant provided an updated wetland permit application on 08/04/2023. We didn't actually receive that, so I just wanted to make that deletion. And then the previous suggested insertion is to look for that final document. We've got all the information, we just need to have it compiled together.
And, Mr. President, Patrick, would you repeat the first one, 22 also? You had on 22, you had a
Yes,
correction.
certainly.
Number 5, was that down
Yes.
under this heading, Rule I?
It's under Rule F, wetland alteration. It would be a new number 5. Applicant must provide a final updated replacement plan document containing all changes from regulatory review.
Manager Wall, if you look at your screen, it's in red line up there.
Yeah, oh, thank you. Yeah. Thank you. Sorry, I missed the screen there.
And then the last one was on page, I guess I should verify that. Yes, it is on page 24. It's all the way at the bottom. I can show it here. In finding number 8, were template language, we were referencing stormwater facilities. There isn't that requirement for the project. It is for a culvert crossing of ACD 5362. So just the deletion of the stormwater facilities and.
Are there any questions of Patrick?
Mr. Chair, this is the first time I believe I've seen an application where a road has crossed a drainage ditch system. Has this occurred often? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
It does happen with some frequency. Maybe this is a little different that it is a completely new section of road. I'm sure that happens as well, but yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Could I have a motion, please? All right, I will move to conditionally approve pending receipt of changes, permit 23-044 with the changes discussed moments ago by our lead staff person, Patrick, who deals with these issues, in accordance with the engineer's findings and recommendations contained in engineer's report dated August 2nd, 2023.
Second.
Any discussion?
That was for Caprock, right?
That was for Caprock. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 5-0. All right, we are now up to open mic. Is that correct?
We have
President Brett?
Oh, Molly, I'm sorry, I forgot. We've got your 2 permits, or your
Yep.
2 grants.
Continuation of the consent agenda.
Right.
Yep.
Good morning, Mr. President and Board of Managers. Today for your approval, we have 2 water quality grant applications. One is in Anoka County. This is our A23-02 application for a shoreline restoration, and another application in Ramsey County, R23-06, for another shoreline restoration. If there are any questions on these applications, I invite you to ask them now.
Anyone have any questions? Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, I would move to approve the water quality grant consent agenda as outlined on the table above. Application number A23-02 and application R23-06 in accordance with Rice Creek Watershed staff's recommendation based on established program guidelines dated August 3rd, 2023 at the recommendation of the Citizens Advisory Committee.
Second.
Moved in second. Any discussion?
Mr. President, I attended the Citizens Advisory Committee meeting last Wednesday. Both of these items were discussed, and they are passed unanimously at the meeting.
All right. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 5-0. Now I believe we come to open mic. Mr. LeBlanc, I understand you'd like to speak to us. Why don't we drop that down a little bit?
There you go. Is that okay?
Yeah, I thought I did that, but not hard enough. Okay, all right. Thank you. Rice Creek managers, my name is Wayne LeBlanc. I live at 1677 Peltier Lake Drive. I live on Peltier Lake. And there's some of us that have some concerns. I've been on this water business for a long time. Right now, Peltier Lake has seen 2 years' worth of chemical attack by dicot. And I think maybe you can do something about it. And so I'm here to see what you think about this. A new Peltier Lake Association was formed recently, and I didn't even know they existed. They never contacted me, and it took a year to figure out who they were, and I just now found them. Without informing anyone, no general public information, they got a variance from the DNR to change Peltier Lake to get a variance. Peltier Lake is a natural lake, which means no herbicides, but they got a variance and had some treatments done. They used dicot, which is a broad spectrum herbicide. It kills all the plants. And Peltier Lake is kind of a north and south, and in the south part of the lake, virtually all the plants died. And I can see this just about every day. So on May 17th, 2022, there was a treatment. On May 17th, 2023, there was a treatment. And with virtually no plants to absorb nutrients, and now you have dead plants which are contributing to nutrients in the lake, the lake just went right in the dumpster. I got a couple pictures on the back side of this page here. So in the 44 years that I've been on the lake, it's the worst I've seen. And some of the numbers, normally Peltier Lake is not a good lake, as everybody knows. It's one of the worst lakes. And now it's way worse, if you can imagine that. The total phosphorus was normally about 250 or so, 300 sometimes. But the first time they applied this poison, it's 600. And these are Rice Creek watershed numbers. So I suspect the ecology of this lake is been badly damaged. And, you know, you need plants to sustain the zooplankton, to sustain the minnows, to sustain the fish. And fish, 1 pound of fish is 400 pounds of dried algae. So when you wipe out that ecology, you are really damaging the lake. So I think this cycle is damaged and it's headed on a downward cycle. I'm shocked that $4,000 of public money was used for this and there was no public input as far as I know. What's worse is now, because everything is a mess, they want to add more toxins and use copper sulfate to wipe out the algae. And this is a bad idea. So they plan to get a variance in August. So they're going to the DNR to get a variance and start copper sulfate treatments. This is like putting nuclear waste in the lake, because copper sulfate forms a heavy metal precipitate, copper, and then invertebrates and other creatures cannot survive in that, and it's forever. So you're destroying the whole ecology of the lake if that goes in. Another person talked to me about the copper sulfate treatments of St. Paul water. He said they used to do it every 3 days, and when it's bad, they do it every day. and it just made this toxic sludge that is horrible. We just don't want that. So I've written the DNR a letter, which is attached, to try to stop that copper sulfate treatment. And I don't know where that's going to go. They've not yet received the application from this group. So I'm trying to head that off, and I'm here to try to have you help head that off. So in summary, my 3 minutes, almost up. Stop the diquat, which is banned in Europe. It just is not the way to go. That these chemical treatments are not the way to go. There's plenty of other ways to help Peltier Lake that don't damage it. Deny the permission for copper sulfate and keep Peltier Lake a natural lake. There's also a move afoot to change that status. And I want to emphasize that Peltier Lake is about 78% parkland, and the rest is 22% homeowners. And I believe they have half the homeowners. They've picked and choose, I think, because they didn't talk to me. So they have 11% maybe of the shoreline to do all of these treatments. And I'm a little disgusted with it. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions?
I
Mr. Lippincott?
do have a question. I maybe should know this, but were we involved in funding the DIQUAT?
Yes, I think so. Check it out.
No,
I don't remember that.
And I have contacted this organization, and I said, you know, I'd like to give you some input, and they said, no, they're going to go ahead. So
Mr. President.
it's not like
Sir.
I have tried to talk to the organization. Not all lake associations know what they're doing. I think they have good intentions, and I'm going to try to turn them around, but, and maybe if some of these, you know, hopefully government can stop some of this, maybe they'll get the message.
Mr. Administrator?
Yes, Board of Managers, the district does have a curly leaf pondweed program. Its intent is to help with water quality, because when curly leaf dies, it releases the phosphorus into the lake water. So in 2023, we did partner with the Lake Association, $3,000. It's a match for the application of the chemical to kill the curly leaf pondweed. The district provided its vegetation survey identifying the locations where curly leaf was known to exist. The district does not regulate these chemicals that are being noted. That solely lies with the DNR.
So we're well aware of the curly leaf pondweed. That's very specific, and that one does cause algae to create. So killing curly leaf helps water quality. So that's a lot different than what you're describing. It doesn't kill any other plants.
Oh, it does, Mr. President.
I can explain a little bit maybe, but
But-
curly leaf, in the spring, the lake is wonderful while the curly leaf is growing well.
Right.
But about July 1st, it dies, and then it produces all the nutrients in the lake, which causes a problem. And I understand that,
Yeah.
but there's other ways to solve that. If you use mechanical harvesting, for instance.
Oh, that's a disaster.
Mr.
That's an absolute disaster.
Mr. President.
Yeah, go ahead.
So,
Anyway, but this is not the way to go, because this is really damaging the lake.
Mr. President.
Yeah.
So Sunday, I received a telephone call from Wayne, and yesterday when we left, Monday, I mean, we left the our morning meeting. I had Mr. Sant, Mary Jo, telephone me. You know, she is the president for 20-some more years now of the Anoka Saltwater Conservation District and a member of our CAC. So, and concerned about this. And so I had a discussion with Matt Koshin and about it. First of all, the DNR took an unusual exception in granting a variance to a natural lake. That's not common, hasn't been done before. And to Matt's knowledge, from my discussion with him, that's about the only time he's seen that, at least in our district, okay. Number two, he agrees that diquat is not the best chemical use here. And it hasn't had an impact in reducing the phosphorus in the lake, which is the purpose of it, of which money was expended. Matt gave me a figure also about that time. I didn't know we'd spend any money on it, but it's within the budget, and the budget is the discretion for the staff to use some of them. He also said that he's used a different chemical, and the price is twice as much, but it's much more selective towards curly leaf and leaving native plant species alone. We're going to see how this works out. It was used in a different lake in Ramsey County, and he suggested that this winter we have a workshop on this. And so Mary Jo is probably going to bring this to the CAC to have a chat with them about it. And so we're looking to see what, that's kind of the way it looks at it. It's unusual to me to see the DNR give a variance for a natural lake. And so I don't really understand how that happened, but that happened, and we don't have any, as the district, control over it. The only thing we have control over is whether we are going to help fund it. Yeah. And that's, it didn't sound like the staff's excited about the results, that they've seen so far. So I'll leave it at that, and thank you for coming to the meeting. And
I think you could at least have some input to the DNR.
Yeah.
Well, if you don't have jurisdiction.
So what I'm going to propose to our administrator is that we talk to Matt directly and see what we can do because we do obviously care directly about the quality of the water in Peltier. And we've done drawdowns trying to help some of the problems with algae in that lake. And we're not going to ignore the concern. At least we'll get a report from our staff on what should be done and what can be done.
So, Mr. President, then a final comment is many years ago, there was an issue about fish kill up on Howard Lake in Columbus. And the district had funded a large amount of money for the DNR to go in there and match with the DNR funding to do this. It was the DNR that's in charge of this, and we just were providing matching funds. And the citizens from that lake came and complained. I remember sitting in the audience listening to it. And the district made a decision not to retract those funds and not to spend it. That was the only control the district had, was not the finance. And it actually killed the fish kill in that lake at that time. They would have killed everything. I just wanted to point that out. The district has some history in the past of controlling its funding for chemical treatments.
But I just want to note, I live on, as you may recall, Baldeel, and we've had the curly leaf pondweed problem. We tried the mechanical, and all we did was spread it. And we have, for the last, maybe eight years or more, been applying only in restricted areas, very restricted areas where the pond leaf is, and has dramatically improved water quality along with our alum treatments. So, but yes, Mr.
Board of Managers, I'd just say that, yes, the district is obviously concerned about the water quality in our water bodies. I think our work to date has shown us that the cause of phosphorus and its level in any body of water is dependent on many factors. This is likely a participant or an item that should be considered in that, but there are other factors, lack of rainfall, contributing off the watershed, et cetera. Yeah. So I'll make note to have Matt address the board about it.
That would be great. Thank you. Is there anyone else who wanted to speak to us this morning? Yes, come ahead. If you'd kindly state your name and address, please.
Hi, I'm Terry O'Connell. I live at 1000 Main Street, Lino Lakes, and I'm actually here with the same issue he has. I live close to Peltier Lake, so I do a lot of kayaking in it. And 2 years ago, the water was so thick, and I know Wayne, and I said, is there something going on? So I want to make sure you guys realize this is more than what typically is. It was consistency of like a soup. It was so thick, and I did not feel any carp, but that could be because the traps are working down south. I don't know. I mean, I can feel them. I felt them this spring underneath my kayak when there's so many carp. It's what I'm trying to tell you. And good or bad, they're there. Okay.
In Peltier Lake?
And Peltier Lake, yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. And I have kayaked from Peltier Lake down to Long Lake more than once. It's a nice little jaunt. So I'm very familiar with it. And I have a couple questions. Now, I always was under the understanding that lake was not really owned by the people around the lake. It's actually a state commodity. So no, I just meant all lakes. I thought all lakes in Minnesota were not particularly owned. People may own all the land, so you can't get into them, but they're not. And in this case, I just see this as something that just goes on down to Long Lake and then to the Mississippi is what I'm trying to say. And the other thing is I'm not sure. I know some places St. Paul owns the shoreland, but does Anoka County own where the park is? Because maybe that's where I should contact them and see if they know about this, because they own a lot. And I know the Y also has their camp for these kids going out on it. And I don't know if they knew this was going on either, because I don't think they would want the kids jumping in the water with this going on, this chemical. I don't know how toxic it is, but if it's killing fish, I assume it was killing the carp, I don't know. And all the other stuff, it might be affecting them. So if Anoka County owns that part, the shoreline, I will contact them to make sure they know about it also, because I think they should, so.
Mr. President, Anoka County Parks owns a great deal of that shoreland on the west side of Peltier Lake. Many years ago, the district on several occasions has partnered with Anoka County for the purchases of those properties so that they would become part of the park system. So I don't know the current status of what the Water Authority has given up or not at this time. I know they took out the pump house on Centerville, and but it has been a long-term project of the district to work with Anoka County Parks on that chain of lakes issue there.
Anything else?
Nope, that's it. Thank
Any
you
other
for your
questions?
time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for coming.
I'd just like to leave you with one more thing, and that's this, to please try to shut off this copper sulfate, because that is a permanent problem. The dicot, the lake probably can recover, but this copper sulfate is not good. Please read all my stuff on that. And if you want to know more about who I am, I did some stuff on the
I
bottom.
think we know who you are. Thank you. Anything else? Any other person open mic? If not, we'll move on to our next agenda item.
Yes, Board of Managers, next item on the agenda is U.S. Site Works partial payment request number 7. Ashley's here to discuss that with you.
Welcome, Ashley.
There we go, a little bit. Good morning, Mr. President, Board of Managers. Page 68 of your guys' packet, as Administrator Tomczyk mentioned, partial pay request number 7 from U.S. Site Work for the Anoka County Ditch 5362 main trunk repair has been submitted. Work that is included in this is that they have completed tree clearing, channel excavation, spoil spreading, and the extension and stabilization of the city storm sewer outfalls. We did have city staff on site during installation as well as afterwards. We walked through to make sure if they had any concerns. The partial payment request is $209,000, $583.92. Split 60% to the WMD and 40% ad valorem. Staff have no concern with this and would recommend approval.
Anyone have questions of Ashley? Hearing none, can we have a motion?
Mr. President, I move to approve U.S. Site Work Inc.'s pay request number 7 as submitted and certified by the district engineer and direct staff to issue a payment in the amount of $209,583.92.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0. Thank you, Ashley.
Yes, and then just brief project update. We are considering the project substantially complete. We have some seating left. Gates have been installed where the city has requested them to be installed at. So we will be walking through the site this week with the contractor for final punch list items, ensuring that seating is done, and then keeping an eye on it as we go forward. While it is substantially complete, they will, if needed, have spring touch-up work.
Fabulous. It's been
Yeah.
kind of a challenge, hasn't it?
It has. This is, it's quite joyful to see this one kind of starting to wrap up. So it was a rough winter, some rough construction. So, but they got through it. Contractors have been very good at communication and working with us and the landowners to make sure that we're all on the same page and we get this done.
Great.
Looks to me like you're up with the next item too.
Yes, I am. So next item, yes, page 74 in your guys' packet. Kind of twofold. The first is the overview kind of the work plan. A refresher, this is the Judicial Ditch 5 drain tile system in Forest Lake. The board had previously directed staff to complete a repair report with Houston Engineering, and then based on the repair report findings, execute maintenance and repair of the system through the minor maintenance program. This was because of the cost of maintenance and the number of landowners on the system. So few landowners, it would have been quite an astronomical cost per landowner to try and do it as a single repair. So on the money side of it, excuse me, getting higher and higher. This spring, or this, I guess, late winter, early spring, the board did approve our contracted services agreement, which allows staff to reach out to local contractors and use day labor contracts to execute minor maintenance. As part of this, we did, you guys did approve delegation of $10,000 to the administrator. This did precede Resolution 2023-004, which further clarified additional spending by the board president and for different services. So we are asking for your consensus that we continue all minor maintenance under the 2023-004 resolution. One of those days.
Too many words.
Yes, excuse me. So we're asking for consensus that we continue to the rest of our work orders under that. It just gives that flexibility to the board president for the 20,000. Specifically for Judicial Ditch 5, because it is a drain tile system, drain tile is a material, whereas in an open channel excavation, we don't pay for material. We're just digging the sediment out. So there is an added cost there because it's drain tile. Additionally, work moves a little bit slower when you have to move material around. And then the cherry on the top is that this system is out in kind of a soggy, peaty area, which requires the equipment to use mats, which slows it down even more. So we have additional hours there, which is why you're seeing such a high number. Staff are estimating, based on communication with the engineer and contractor, about 80,000 left for the last couple phases. We're asking for an additional wiggle room of 20,000 because site conditions change fast, and we want that flexibility to be able to continue work and not be in a situation where we have to pause and incur extra costs by waiting.
So I have a recollection that there had been a problem with the DNR and some additional drainage. Did that get worked out?
Yep, so before we even started work, we met with the DNR. They're actually a large landowner that is on the system. So we met with them as a landowner. We have maintained their drainage because it was they had a private system draining into the public system. And we wanted to clarify, do you want that cut off to maintain your WMA, or do you want it to maintain that drainage? They did not want to change those existing conditions. They have a very lovely tamarack forest out there. So yes, so all concerns have been resolved with the DNR. And that phase was actually completed in 2021.
Does anyone else have questions?
Mr. President, I'd also point out that Ashley's has made a point of telling us that the continued drought provides an opportunity here for early, easy access and to work on this system, completing additional phases in a single year in an effort to replace larger portions of the drain tile system is more economical and attainable because of these dry conditions. And with that, Mr. President, I see that we have a proposed motion, so I would move to delegate to the administrator on the advice of council the authority to execute the described individual work order subject to an estimated amount of $80,000 plus up to an additional $20,000 to address unforeseen conditions and subject to the overall maintenance program budget, and further move to affirm that all other work orders for maintenance activities be executed in accordance with Resolution 2023-04.
Is there a second?
Yes, I'll second it.
Any discussion?
Thank you for working on this. Ashley, this has been a long project, many summers, lots of difficulty, and this has been a great. Thank you.
When this was brought to us, the photographs of the tiles sitting perpendicular to the dirt ditch and floating up, and it clearly needs to be done, so thank you.
And you have the bulkhead replaced then into 2, I reckon, huh?
Yep, that'll be in the phase 2, yep.
Yep, thank you.
So did I actually call for the vote?
No.
I didn't think so. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 5-0. Thank you, Ashley.
Thank you.
Anything else from you this morning?
I believe I can introduce the first informational item, but you have one more action item.
Okay, very good. So check register, I believe.
Yes. Mr. Chair, I move approval of the check register dated August 9th, 2023 in the amount of $169,104.19 prepared by Redpath and Company, and to connect to the conversation we just had about the Anoka County drainage, you will note that the arrow fence construction was $4,500 in our check register. So I move approval.
I'll second that. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 5-0. So now Ashley's back. You getting your extra steps in this morning.
Yes, good morning. Thank you, Mr. President. I will just quickly introduce, this item is the Ramsey County Ditch 4 Repair Report. We do have Mr. Adam Neese from Houston Engineering here, who's working as project manager, to give you a brief presentation to run through that repair report.
Great.
Nothing too out of the ordinary. We've done inspections and recognized that we had actually planned for a larger repair, but based on inspections and the condition of the system, which Adam will touch on, we've actually proposed a less significant repair. So, yeah, right? I know.
Yeah.
Who would have guessed
Wow.
it? So, with that, I will introduce Mr. Adam Neese from Houston Engineering.
Thank you. Welcome, Adam.
Thank you, Ashley. Thank you, board. Give me a moment to share my screen here. Okay, thank you for the opportunity to come share on the Ramsey County Ditch 4 repair report. I do have about 15 minutes or so just to walk through some of the details. Oh, yes.
He's not in charge. That'll work.
Yeah, that's good.
Well, that's even worse. Here she comes.
There.
There it is.
Hey, we got it. We got it. Okay, thank you.
All right, very good. Yeah, so let's get right into it. Ramsey County Ditch 4, just as a quick visual refresher, shown here on the map in the red line, we are flowing north, and we're looking at the main trunk downstream from Oasis Pond, and that flows to Johanna Lake through Little Johanna Lake. The ditch does serve residential, commercial, and industrial interests here. Just to give a real brief history for recent events that have happened, in 2010, there was some maintenance to Oasis Pond, and then every 3 years following that, in 2013, 2016, and 2019, there was tree removals and deadfall that was occurring in the ditch to keep it free and clear and flowing. In the spring of 2018, we did experience multiple locations of some flooding that occurred. And kind of subsequent to that, in 2018 and 2019, we did complete a historical review of RC4 to kind of reestablish what would have been the right-of-way and other historical documents at the time. Then moving into 2021, there was a partial transfer of the ditch to the city. I'll touch on that a little bit more here in coming slides. And then also in 2021, there was a city-led replacement of a segment of the open ditch with some subsurface tile and pipe. And that's south of Terrace Drive. So again, just to touch on that just a little bit further, the map is showing a couple of colors. We got a little red dashed line. On that map, you'll notice kind of right in the center is Oasis Pond. And so again, south of Terrace Drive, that red dashed line is that segment that was replaced, converted from open ditch to pipe by the city in 2021. And then the segment in that blue dashed line on the screen is the portion that we are working on the repair for now. So that's looking into 2024, maybe 2025. Again, just we're downstream of Oasis Pond. The issues that we are seeing is excessive tree canopy, which is shading out the banks of the channel, and it's preventing good deep-rooted vegetation from getting established. The ditch does have relatively steep grade, and what we've seen is as there's been erosion of the channel banks, that steep grade will carry sediment on downstream into Little Lake Johanna. So we're not seeing a lot of sediment build up in the channel, but rather it's flowing downstream. And then the heavy tree canopy does prevent access or easy access, and so that provides challenges for maintenance. Again, with this project, I guess as I've stated already, there's not anticipated to be much sediment removal at all.
Mr. President, Board, just noting from that previous slide, Adam talked about that prior project completed by the city. Just as a reminder, that was one that was funded in large part by the Watershed District through dollars from both ad valorem and from the Water Management District charges. It was considered to be a repair of the drainage system in conjunction with that process to transfer it to the city.
Thank you, Chris. Last year, we did do a site walkthrough, and Ashley was part of that as well. And I'm just going to show you a small handful of pictures here from that walkthrough, just to give you an idea of what we're seeing. Top left picture, we are showing the ditch as well as a gravel path there. It is a heavily used just recreational trail by the public. Also in the bottom right picture, the ditch does have several retaining walls and fences that are in close proximity to the ditch, which do pose challenges for getting large, heavy equipment in there for maintenance. Another couple pictures here. These really do highlight the tree canopy that's shading out the ditch and the banks. And you can see everything's kind of in shadow. We're not getting any of that deep-rooted vegetation, grasses along the banks. There is some, but it's not enough to maintain those slopes. And then also the bottom right does show some of that deadfall that we're seeing in the ditch as those trees fall over. Another picture here, the outlet of Oasis Pond is a concrete grouted spillway, and there's also grouted riprap in the channel. So we're kind of giving you a couple of snapshots there. We did note that the riprap in the channel, the grouted riprap, is in pretty decent condition. So that was good to see, but next slide here is just a real quick one page out of our plan and profile that we've developed as part of this repair report. The picture, the image on top is, you kind of got to tip your head, and the north is pointed to the right. So again, Oasis Pond is kind of right in the middle of that image. And recognizing there's a lot of lines on the picture, the one I wanted to draw your attention to is the profile on the bottom. So there are two lines that are representing the bottom of the ditch. The dashed line that we're seeing on the bottom is from a survey that was actually several surveys that were completed over the years here of the ditch in different segments at different times. And that's essentially representing the current condition of the bottom of the ditch. And then the solid black line that we're seeing right on top of that profile is what we believe is the as constructed or subsequently improved conditions of that bottom of ditch. And the important thing to note about that is that they are essentially right on top of one another. So that's again pointing back to the fact that we don't believe that there is much sediment accumulating in the ditch itself, but that it is flowing on downstream to Little Lake Johanna. So our recommended repairs, we are looking to stabilize the ditch banks and also create a maintenance corridor for the ditch. So this includes tree clearing. We would go from bank to bank, and then also on one side of the ditch we would clear enough to provide an access corridor, and that's just on one side, not both sides. We would remove any deadfalls that are in the ditch, and then we would have seeding of those banks to stabilize the slopes and have, if needed, some erosion control blanket. As far as the regulatory and permitting that's been done for the project so far, this project does traverse 3 public waters: Oasis Pond, Little Lake Johanna, and Johanna Lake. We have no work planned within public waters or wetlands, and no wetland impacts will result from our proposed repairs. We do note that the NPDES pollution stormwater permit for construction may be required, which is typically handled prior to construction by the contractor. Getting into some threatened and endangered species, we have looked into this, and there are 3 known state-listed threatened species near the project. We do have the jumping spider, the caddisfly, and the kinnikinick dewberry, which is a nice little shrub vegetation. As far as impact avoidance for those threatened species, mostly construction timing, being outside of the windows of whether it be nesting or roosting or breeding periods for these different species. Other best management practices and also species awareness we will include. Discussion with the contractor pre-construction to make them aware of things we can do to avoid impacts to these species. And then the natural heritage NHIS review has been completed already, and that's included in the final repair report. Just to give you two visuals here of a project that's been ongoing, it's the ACD 5362. It's not to tangent too much, but it's a very similar project to what we anticipate RCD4 being. And so the picture on the left does show kind of the active construction site, tree clearing, tree removals, and ditch sloping. So it's does look a bit messy, admittedly, on the left, and then on the right is a picture, I believe, from last week where they have straw laid down and the seed laid. There's no vegetation coming up yet, but that will hopefully be coming soon. So it's looking very good. And again, this is just a visual for reference on what we expect RCD4 to look like. Okay, as far as management of the ditch bank, if there are any areas that do need cleaning and smoothing, the spoil will be smoothed. And then we will be using a perennial seed mix for any upland areas. We always let the people know that this is not going to be turf grass. It's not the Kentucky blue. It's not going to be beautiful necessarily. And then we will use herbicide for any maintenance on trees that we cut down. It's a painted or dyed herbicide that we put on the trees so they don't regrow. And then we always have that recommendation to leave the tall grasses, whether it's for the residential or the city, to not mow it, to really help that establishment of that deep-rooted vegetation. And then also encouragement for landowners to not put any objects in the right-of-way, sheds, fences, chicken coops, etc. So moving right along then to our preliminary opinion of probable construction cost. I'll jump right down to the bottom line. We're anticipating a total of about $235,000 for this project. Of that, we have construction costs estimated at about $150,000. This project does not include any crossings, culvert replacements, so there's no money for that. And then we got about $45,000 for engineering, legal fees, administrative costs, and then a 20% contingency of about $30,000. So again, that $235,000 is kind of our estimate. That's, of course, could swing wildly depending on the market, and we've seen some market correction as of late, but we'll see once we get to bidding for this project.
So I have a question to administrator, presumably. We have an existing WMD for the project we did with the city. Would this likely be rolled into that existing one? I mean, are those people paying for that project?
Manager Bradley.
There you go. I understand we have the discretion to modify the funding approach, but I'm trying to figure out whether or not these landowners are paying for the existing WMD. That was my first question.
President Bradley, I'm going to defer to Chris.
All right.
Yeah, President Bradley, the same people would be paying for it under the same water management district. That water management district charge has already passed now. The third year was just this last year here in payments. So the idea would be to reestablish that next summer for a 2025 through 2027 charge.
Okay, thank you.
For the entire.
For the entire water management district. Again, on any of these water management districts, it's the contributing drainage area to the whole system. And since that contributing drainage area hasn't changed, even though we have had portions of the system that have been transferred to the city, it's still the same people. We view the payment as being, or the work on the system as being a collective of all.
Just go ahead.
So, thank you, Mr. Chair. Like you and Bald Eagle Lake comparisons, I have a ditch project that was right by my house that was similar to something like this. So the first question is, you said there wasn't a lot of sediment going, so why are we disturbing what is there right now?
Yes, thank you for the question. So we have observed that there's not sediment accumulation in the channel, but what we believe is happening is as erosion is happening on the banks, the steep slopes of the ditch are carrying that sediment downstream to Little Lake Johanna. And so in effort to protect that water quality and the function of the ditch, we're hoping to establish good vegetation on the banks of RCD4 to help protect any erosion from happening in the
A great
future.
PR statement for the folks whose land is going to be disturbed. Secondly, if you bring that picture back up, that there's a gravel path along part of it, I would assume that that's in the right-of-way of the ditch?
Okay, that should be coming up here momentarily. There we go. Yeah, and we are anticipating this being partially used for access of the heavy equipment that we're using to bring in to do the clearing. But just to continue clearing more of it, I believe this trail is on the east side of the ditch, and we are tentatively currently planning to have most of the clearing occur on the east side of the ditch.
So who is this? Did the city do this? Is this city property or? Yeah, I mean that again, when you do the public hearing, the idea that there is an easement and that those easements, especially on a walking path, you're going to have public walking on private land that is an easement to the drainage authority. So, I mean, just by way of information, because our property follows the drainage ditch, we have given easement to the city also to have a walking path along that. So, I mean, it gets pretty complicated, but you have people, you have public property. So talk to us about that, about how those easements work.
Nick?
Yeah. Board of Managers, in most cases, the district holds an implied easement over the public drainage system from its original establishment. So the good folks, the property owners looking at their deeds may not immediately see that it exists. So there is good reason for our public information meetings that we hold with all these types of projects and so on. I saw Ashley indicate that it's a mix of property owners, so I imagine we have both public and private. I think your statement, I had the same curiosity, is the path in the right of way? We're going to have a fair amount of tree clearing, and so the public interest in what that looks like and its continued use will likely become an issue. I see Chris would like to comment.
Yeah, Mr. President, just to add to that a little bit more, there's also different variations on what the trail exists as along that along the ditch there. There's a portion that's closest to Oasis Pond that is actually a city trail that's paved. And then I'm not sure if it's directly connected to this one shown on the picture, but I believe the one shown on the picture is an unofficial trail. Again, it goes through multiple types of property. The University of Northwestern is located along the ditch, and I'm not sure if this path here in this photo is part of that area or not, but we've encountered that also on some of our other projects, including most recently ACD 5362, where we have unofficial accessing of the public along the ditch. And it's also very important to note that when the district has its implied easement over the ditch, that is not a public right-of-way for them to traverse there. So, and that's something that we've had to have multiple discussions with the city and the public about on that 5362 project, is that when we're opening up this canopy, this isn't meant to be a carte blanche for people to walk through here. Thus, the reason we've put those gates up.
So I have a recollection hearing you mention the word flooding, and that this area has had a history of flooding from time to time. Will this have any impact on that?
Generally, it will improve the drainage function of the ditch by removing the deadfalls. We're not deepening or widening the ditch, so as far as capacity relative to the as constructed, it shouldn't be any different. But relative to the current state of it, it should improve.
Okay. So the answer is no. Yes. Other than whatever a deadfall backs up something. Okay. Mr. Waller.
Chris, does this have an owl interest? You know, you're waiting for the owl to be, whatever owl it is. It's you mentioned earlier when we were talking about JD3 in Washington County. Something about the owl. I'm just curious. When I saw the endangered species, the owl came to my mind.
Yeah, Manager Waller, I believe what you're referring to is the northern long-eared bat.
Oh, bat. That's right. I'm sorry. It's an owl. It's a bat.
That recently has been put on the federal endangered species list, if I'm correct. And so there's been changing designation of how you can work in tree clearing areas, and it's certainly something that we'll need to be conscious of and have discussions on as we do a tree clearing operation, as we will in any tree clearing operation we do.
Thank you.
And just to add as well, a lot of times the time frame for tree removals is the most critical thing there for the bat, and not doing any removals from, I believe it was June through August, or middle of August perhaps.
Manager Wennett?
In this heavily, residential area, you've had experience in this last 53, in Anoka County, right? So
5362.
it sounds like you've done an excellent job with the communication with the residents. So best wishes on this one.
So, Mr. Administrator, as I read this, you're looking for us to approve moving forward to set a public informational meeting at 6:30 p.m. in the week of September 25th. You need us to take official action to do that?
No, you wouldn't have to take official action, you may if you like.
I move that we direct staff to set a notice and public information meeting to be held at a time determined by staff as appropriate.
Second.
Thank you.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? None. Passes. Thank you for an excellent report.
Thank you.
Mr. Administrator, where are we?
We are at the district engineer update and timeline.
Chris, do you have anything to add? Go ahead.
Yeah, Manager Bradley, no, I don't have anything to add here. No.
Okay, this is your chance to ask all those questions. Okay, administrator update, is that where we're at?
Yes, indeed. Board of Managers, just a couple items. Thank you for the discussion on the 2024 budget. I'll make note that I did update the estimate for, I believe it was Fund 95 regarding the Preview Lake Outlet project and the meander repair, added $25,000 to that fund. Also took the same amount of fund balance. And I did confirm the 6.17% levy increase over the previous year. And we were realizing roughly a $4 drop in impact on $200,000 of value there. Moving forward now, we will make the public notice for the meeting on August 23rd. Moving on from there, ACD 5362, Ashley was speaking to, we did have a change order for the vegetation type that she had made note of, some deep rooted vegetation. And the district is reviewing its healthcare plan offerings. We, as always, work for the best value from our provider for the Rice Creek folks. Like all things, costs are creeping up This year, we're roughly 7% or so in that premium cost. I was going to make mention of the community discussions that Mr. LeBlanc represented, but I think that's well covered. We'll just have Matt come back and speak to what the district's doing there.
Very good. Manager Waller?
Thank you, Mr. President. So last Wednesday, I did attend the Washington County Consortium meeting at which Mr. Hughes was a presenter. Did a fine job. Thank you very much. It's always enjoyable to listen to non-government organization people who come to realize what is actually going on, which was, he answered the questions. There were a couple of individuals that were astonished that wetland banking was not creating new wetland soil in itself. I mean, the stakes, millions of years, but anyways. So thank you, Patrick, for your work, and it was a very good presentation. Second, I attended the Citizens Advisory Committee, and I'll make note that our staff, Administrator Tom Zach and Ms. Summerfield, Ms. Ritchie, Mr. Koshin, and Ms. Nelson all did a fine job. We had some discussions, as we just talked about earlier, about the approval of the cost shares, but we went outside to take a look. It was at New Brighton, and there's community center at the carp barrier. And as we had, Mr. Koshin gave us a very good presentation, and then we left to go to Hanson Park for Miss Ashley to give us a presentation. But the only presentation she made was it's canceled on account of this rainstorm. So we all went home. But the staff did a very nice job. And thank you for your work. I discussed earlier with you today about the Peltier Lake, so there's no need to go over that again. I would point out to you that I did, Mr. President, at your request, stop and visit with the administrator from the city of Hugo, Mr. Brian Baer, and he will contact Mr. Tom Zach and make for a timely presentation at some future workshop. And finally, of course, today I just wanted to motivate. This is Miss Housley's, Senator Housley's latest campaign literature, which we all received. But I wanted to note that she got $5.7 million for stormwater management in Forest Lake. Now, we won't get all of that, but I think we're going to get $500,000 or more of it. And in addition to that, the downtown projects also got some $6 million, and they got some money for road improvements in addition to the downtown area, which some of that is in our district. For example, it could be County Road 83, I think it is, and maybe Clear Lake or somewhere in there, whatever goes on. So that's nice to see the $10 million coming in here, particularly stormwater enhancement of $5 million, whether it's whichever district gets to use most of it. And I think that concludes all the things. Let me check here. I had all these chores to do. Yes, I have no more confession.
Thank you very much. Manager Wynant.
I have nothing today.
Manager Wagaman.
I have nothing.
Robertson.
No, sir.
And I have nothing to add to an excellent meeting. Thank you all for your participation on, I guess, always. So I have a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second that.
All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Surprisingly, none.